The Jazz man most likely to take home some hardware this season is Darren Peterson with the Rookie of the Year, but I think multiple Jazz men get honored this season, and that means it's a good year.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Jazz Nation? Leif Thulin with you here on Locked On Jazz, Friday edition. And today, we've got a fun show. I'll go over Darren Peterson candidacy to win Rookie of the Year, who he's contending with, my honest thoughts on if he will win it or not, why I think Jaren Jackson is the best player on the Jazz and most likely to draw award votes this season, aside from DP at Rookie of the Year. And lastly, how many All-Stars will the Jazz have? Because it could be multiple. And that all bodes well. So let's dive right in. First things first, Darren Peterson, of course, is the storyline for this season. Yes, we're going to talk about winning and how Lauri and Jaren is the debate for the best player. I think there's a real world Darren Peterson is the best player on the team by the end of the season. But overall, it's probably not. But because that's possible, that means he deserves to be very, very much at the front and center of all of our conversations if he delivers to that promise, and therefore at the front and center of the Rookie of the Year awards. So he is generally priced around $270 to $350, no matter somewhere where you look for that. And what that means is if you were to put $100 in, you'd win $270 to $350, depending which book. And that basically says he's a top 3 contender for Rookie of the Year after a strong summer league performance. Nothing changed. The other guys that are up there, of course, the guys that were near him, it's Cam Boozer, it's Caleb Wilson, and AJ DeMonza. Now I'm going to kind of break this down in terms of situation, because Rookie of the Year has a lot to do with in terms of sheer production as opposed to factoring in winning. And here's why. Because AJ DeMonza and Darren Peterson both enter situations as the 1 and 2 picks, respectively, that have players that are higher than them at the start of the season on the pecking order. Trae Young, Anthony Davis, who knows if they're healthy, who knows how they'll build, but AJ needs the ball in his hands. He needs the ball in his hands, and Trae Young is a great facilitator, but he also needs the ball in his hands. Anthony Davis is fantastic. If he's healthy, he needs the ball a lot and has scored nearly 30 per game before. So I think the sheer production is against AJ. I think it makes it really hard for AJ to have the volume that gives him that nod. And that's what he had at BYU. He had the ball in his hands at all times, and he put forth amazing numbers. DP, it's a little different. Yes, I think the leading scorer on the team is Lauri Markkanen. I think it's likely Jaren and Keontae probably exceed what DP's sheer output is. But there's a world in which he controls his own future and the ball is in his hands because he's the best guard on the team. I just don't see a world in which AJ has the ball more than Trae Young. And even guys like Trey Johnson and Bub Carrington make it difficult to have an enormous ball handling responsibility. Not to mention Anthony Davis really demands attention with the basketball. And a lot of the offense will be catered to him. And the Wizards and Jazz both have expectations to win basketball games. So their situations are similar. But I'm going to stick with DP here for a minute. I've told you guys I predicted about 17.5, 18 points per game. And that's definitely enough output to be in contention. But I want to liken it to this year. Con Knippel is on a team that is kind of similar to what I expect the Jazz to be. I think the Jazz can be better than Charlotte was this season. But the point is he scored nearly 20 points per game. And it was on a somewhat winning basketball club. Is Con better than Cooper Flagg? No. And I think Con even knows that. Cooper Flagg's that good. He's that amazing. But in terms of winning, Con had a case. I would have voted Cooper Flagg, though, because I think he was the best player in that class. And so it depends on how they vote. I think Darren Peterson has a chance to show he's the best player in that class and have numbers that are similar to the highest scoring output rookies. So it's interesting to me that it could be classified as like, okay, he could be on the best team, but he's got a chance of being a propelling factor for that best team. And so did Con, don't get me wrong, but his actual impact on the team is less than that of Cooper Flagg, and Cooper Flagg's finish of the season was amazing. So basically, DP has to be on a better team than the rookie that he's contending with, as well as put forth similar numbers. That's the recipe. And I think DP's got a great chance to do so. Let's talk about Cam Boozer. The situation's good. I don't think his sheer output will be as as enormous as some people think. I think Cam Boozer is going to have the ability to steadily impact games, but I just think it won't be splashy and loud, but it could look like 15-7. Is that going to be that much better than the 18-4 from DP? And those are both very possible. In fact, what I think is likely from those two guys. Then there's Caleb Wilson. Caleb Wilson's a freak show athlete, and he should have the opportunity to get the ball in his hands, but he'll be dueling for touches with other young players, and there's really no guarantee how his shot looks. Yes, it's looked transformed and improved, but shooting is a huge thing for Caleb Wilson in order to demonstrate how good he is, how reliable he is as a top option. I believe in his work ethic. I believe in his stardom. You guys know how much I love Caleb Wilson. But I still think DP being on a better team and having likely similar points per game, maybe not rebounds and defense in this regard, I think it leans DP. Now, the one wild card I've got, actually I've got two, but one wild card that's very clear and it could win it. And think of like Tyreek Evans, and he happens to play the same teams as Tyreek Evans did when he won Rookie of the Year. Was Tyreek Evans the best player in his class? No. Was he really talented and on a really poor team? Yes. That's what Darius Acuff is. And I know Darius Acuff has a horrible, horrible summer league, and he's got a bad reputation as he doesn't guard, he didn't help his team win, and blah, 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 blah. I could see him get 22-8 as a rookie. And 22-8 as a rookie is 22-8 as a rookie, because if you're picked that highly, like most of these guys are, your team's expected to lose. So there's not as much of a criticism like there is an MVP when you vote for the best player on the best team. It doesn't matter. The teams are supposed to be bad, so choose the guy who's the best. And if you score 22-8, you have a claim. My outside flyer one would be Braden Burries. I think the Bucks are going to give him the rock and let him do some stuff. I don't think he will win it. I don't think he'll even finish top 5. But I just think he's got an outside chance to really surprise some people. And he was excellent in Summer League, and I covered him at Arizona. So I think he's a player that has potential to surprise people and overperform. But this isn't the overperformance award. It's who's the best rookie. And I think if you ask the NBA evaluators, the players that they're most anticipating watching and trying to think like, oh, we got to deal with those guys in the future, the answer is Darren Peterson. I think he's going to be the best rookie, and I think he really is the most likely to win it all, because he'll score 17 a game on a playoff team, and other guys are going to score 17 a game on a bad team. Who are you going to take? It's got to be DP. Now, who are you going to take as the best player on the Utah Jazz and the most likely to be honored with some hardware or an all-NBA, all-defense type of player? My lean's Jaren Jackson. I'll give that away. I'm going to tell you why coming up next on Locked On Jazz. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together all in one platform. And from sales to accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focused on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about the talent that you have. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports just like it is in business. The adjustment itself is important. But what really impresses me is how smoothly things can be implemented. Everyone knew their role. Everyone was on the same page. And that's what usually separates good organizations from great ones. And that's how I felt growing up about my beloved Utah Jazz when Darren Williams led them to Western Conference Finals. Everyone knew their role. They had a star. They had guys who starred in their role. And everyone was working towards the same path. And that's advancing in the postseason. Let's hope we can emulate it again. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's ODOO.com/lockedon. I also want to tell you about our friends at Murdoch Hyundai. They've been in Utah for over 80 years. The Hyundai is the best car for your money. Safety features, bells, whistles, and all. And all of the cars for amazing prices. I've driven the Tucson. They have the Kona, the Tucson, the Santa Fe, the Palisade. And the Tucson, speaking from experience, was fantastic. You turn left, and it illuminates not only that you're going left and it alerts people that you're going left, but you can see exactly what the camera sees in your mirror. So you don't have to divert back to the home the panel in the middle of your car when you're trying to turn left and you're looking in the left mirror. It keeps it all in one place. It's amazing. They also have electric cars such as the Ioniq 5 and the 6, and they look amazing. and won the World Car of the Year for the Ioniq 6. There are 3 locations in Linden, Murray, and Logan, and I've been to the one in Murray, and I said, Lee, are you Lee from Locked on Jazz? And I said, I sure am. Thank you guys for listening, and they love their basketball. So make sure you check them out and say you listen to Locked on Jazz and get that special treatment that they give everyone all the same. But let them know you listen to Locked on Jazz. Thank you guys, of course, for checking them out. Welcome back to Locked on Jazz. Leif Thulin with you here. And I'll just put it out there. I think Jaren Jackson's the best player on the Utah Jazz. Many will say Lauri because he leads the team in scoring. And for the record, I predicted Lauri to lead the team in scoring with 25 per game and Jaren just cracking 20, maybe 21 a game. But I think the Jazz really are going to be uber reliant on Jaren Jackson. I thought about putting this idea out there that Jaren's the most likely player to win an award for the Utah Jazz. And then I thought, well, if Darren Peterson's the best rookie and the Jazz are good, he's got an inside track, and I think he's the best rookie, and I think the Jazz are going to be good. So it would be disingenuous to say I think he's more likely to win Defensive Player of the Year than I think DP is to win Rookie of the Year. I do not believe that. I think Defensive Player of the Year is Victor Wembanyama's for the next 20 years. But I think it's possible Jaren is an all-NBA defender. So if you're talking accolades as opposed to hardware, I think it's more likely Jaren is an all-NBA defender than it is the Rookie of the Year is Darren Peterson. Of course, there's more players that can be all-NBA than there is the Rookie of the Year. But the premise that intrigues me most is why not both? Why can't the Jazz have both a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, an all-defense member, one of the best 10 defenders in the NBA, and their best player in Jaren Jackson, along with their blooming and blossoming star, Darren Peterson, being the best rookie in the NBA? I think both is possible, and I almost think probable. Or at least DP top 3 finish and Jaren Jackson top 15 defender in the NBA. I don't think that's crazy. Now, I know they only do 2 teams, but you get my point. Now, let's talk Jaren versus Lauri, right? Lauri is the guy who is the franchise's, I won't say face, but he's the most recognizable player for his what he's done so far and what he does for the Utah Jazz. Now, the interesting part about Lauri is we haven't seen him on a winning basketball team, and that's why I think there's going to be so much of an onus, a pressure on Jaren Jackson to, 1, contribute offensively and punish switches and score on the interior, but 2, he is the only proven defender in the starting lineup. There's an expectation that DP can guard, but how many rookie guards actually guard? Very few. How often has Jusuf Nurkic been a good defender? He had better days than others when he was in Portland, but that's a long time ago, and he's a poor defender. Jaren is much maligned for his lack of rebounding and how he's a better 4 than he is a 5. So he's going to play the 5 plenty when Ace plays because Ace is undeniably going to get minutes at the 3, and they don't always want to play Ace and Lauri separately. So Jaren's going to take a ton of pressure and play at the 5 and have to anchor a defense by himself at times, as well as use his length to contribute and complement the space eating of Jusuf Nurkic. Jaren Jackson is a guy that we're expecting 20 points, 6 or 7, maybe 8 rebounds, if everything goes well, and all-NBA defense. If you can get 20 and 7 and all-NBA caliber defense, you're getting a top 25 player in the NBA and therefore an all-star. And I think the Jazz have the best player on their team as the most likely to be an all-star. Now, is he going to lead them in sheer output of scoring or rebounding? Is Lauri likely going to be higher in both? Probably. At least I think in points and rebounds, I think you might call it a wash. So what's Jaren better at, Leaf? Like, I hear people bemoaning this. I think Jaren Jackson has played a more prominent role than Lauri Markkanen throughout his career. And he's done so on better teams, meaning that he's been a better player for his team on better teams than Lauri has been for his own career. I think Jaren Jackson is underrated because he was, everyone said, oh, he's a beneficiary of Jaws gravity. Well, Jaren Jackson played at times by himself, and he also was the Defensive Player of the Year and a multiple-time first-team all-defensive member. He's someone who, on defense alone, earns his check. And there's so much hate on Chet Holmgren for, he was named one of the better players, one of the top 20 players in the NBA, and yet he was dismantled by Wemby. I think the players like Jaren and Chet are being disrespected for how good they've been and how good they are because Wemby is that amazing. I think Jaren and Chet are 2 of the best two-way bigs that have entered the league for over a decade. guys that can step out and score, guys that can score near the basket, have touch, have the physicality to do their best against the biggest bodies, slide their feet and alter shots at the rim among the very best in the NBA for their entirety of their careers. And yet those guys are forgotten. Lauri Markkanen is a very good shooter. He is a very good athlete for his size, but he has not proven his game style and his volume at playing with that game style is conducive to winning. In fact, he's the longest tenured non-playoff member. And I'm not saying this to be critical of Lauri. I just think it's hard to ignore the fact Jaren has been option 1A at times for the Grizzlies and done well at it. And then he was option 2 as well as the defensive player of the year for the Grizzlies and anchored a defense that was good, anchored a team and led a team that was a 2 seed in the Western Conference. He's won, and he's been one of the best players on a winning team from a very young age. And maturation and skill set and an offense that has multiple horses is the best thing possible for Jaren Jackson. So am I going to guarantee he's an all-NBA defender? I don't think he'll be first team because there's a lot of really good defenders. Of course, you're going to have to battle with the likes of Wemby, but you're going to have to battle with Mobley. You're going to have to battle with Scotty Barnes, like a bunch of different guys. The Thompsons, the Dyson Daniels. So I'm not going to say first team. But I think it's very possible you're getting a second-team All-NBA defender, a guy who scores over 20 points per game, and if the Jazz are inside the top 20 defensively, it'll be solely attributed to what Jaren Jackson does. Now, if they're 20th to 25th, that's still a jump forward. Who's on the team this year that wasn't last year, despite losing a rim-protecting center in Walker Kessler? Well, that's Jaren Jackson. I think Jaren Jackson's the best player on the Jazz. I think he's an all-star, fringe candidate at All-NBA. I don't think he'll be there. But I think he's going to be an All-NBA defender because if the Jazz make the playoffs, it means that they're good enough defensively. And the reason they would be Jaren Jackson Jr. Next, I'm going to talk about how many All-Stars there could be to complement Jaren Jackson Jr. and what it would take at each number of All-Stars. All ahead on Locked On Jazz. Welcome back to Locked On Jazz. Leif Thulin with you here for the Friday edition of Locked On Jazz. Darren Peterson, I think, should be the favorite for the Rookie of the Year. I think Jaren Jackson's the best player on the Utah Jazz. And maybe there's takes that you're like, wow, these are flaming hot. Maybe these are lukewarm. Maybe they're not even like breaking a sweat for you guys because you're like, oh, yeah, duh. Well, let me know what you guys think. But I think the Jazz could have 2 All-Stars. And I think it would be unlikely, of course, because you've got 15 teams in the West, and we've talked about how the Jazz have the 11th best odds in the West, and therefore having 2 from a team that's not a forefront contender is rare. I just think that there's a world in which Jaren Jackson is one of the best defenders in the NBA, scoring 20 per game, and the Jazz, by virtue of playing really hard to start their season and getting ahead of the curve, because you know what? Like, frankly, playing hard is what led the Grizzlies to the 2 seed. I think that experience is going to be used and furthered. And now if the Jazz are one of the top 4 teams by All-Star break, let's just say, I think Jaren Jackson's almost a lock for the All-Star game because he's great defensively. He's scoring 20 a game, and he's a good dude. And sometimes that matters in taking into account who's going to be on like All-Star teams. Like, if you're trying to pick a guy, Mike Conley was happy to be there. And I think Jaren Jackson is someone who really appreciates his own hard work, the satisfaction for being rewarded for what he does on both sides of the basketball. The nuance of the game is being appreciated by those who are in charge of making these decisions. And I think that matters to Jaren Jackson. I also think Lauri Markkanen can be an all-star because he's going to be the leading scorer on a team that could be, like I said, a top 5 team in the West by All-Star break. And if you're not going to take Lauri Markkanen scoring 25 a game and the Jazz are a top 5 seed, is there a justification for it? Not really. It's not like the Jazz fans aren't voting. It's not like the Jazz fans don't care. This is stuff we all love. I think it's likely that the Jazz have an all-star. I think it's unlikely they have 2. But if they're a top 5 team, they should have 2. And the best part, the best news that has me salivating is the best 2 players on the Utah Jazz that we're voting for right now may not even factor into the equation when the Jazz are winning into the championship. So right now they've got 2 luxury pieces who are awesome that you hope are on the team for a long time to go because I really like both of them. You hope that Darren Peterson can ascend so quickly in which that he, Lauri, and Jaren are all on the same team and the same contracts they're on right now. But the reality is it's unlikely that Lauri and Jaren are on the same contracts by the time Darren Peterson is Darren Peterson that we hope he can be. But what makes me so bullish about the Utah Jazz and having two all-star caliber players and neither being the best player on the team nor the best prospect is really interesting to me. The best prospect and best player, if he were to be on the team, can't be. Right? Like, if you're thinking about, I'm going to rephrase this. I have an analogy, and I was tinkering with it. My analogy was essentially, sometimes in football, there's a long-term quarterback, and it's like he's bought his time out. He's been waiting, and they had a star in front of him, and that star goes to the NFL. And he's like, yes, it's my time. And then you had a guy waiting in the wings, and it's like, oh man, we gotta do this poor guy dirty. He's paid his dues, and he's been great for us, but we've got a special player. So I'm kind of thinking of analogies of this, and one that came to my mind would be Caleb Williams at USC. But when he was at Oklahoma, they had Spencer Rattler, and they had Kyler Murray before that. And it was like, well, okay, Spencer Rattler, it's your turn. And then they realized, wait a minute, this dude is special. He's better. And then he was like, well, I don't want to fight for this. I'm going to go to USC, and kind of dislodged and displaced some people there and won the Heisman. When you're great and people know it, it happens more quickly than you think. So I was thinking of analogies, and that's why I kind of lost my train of thought. So my apologies there. But the way I'd put it is essentially, I think the Jazz are sitting with a Heisman quarterback on their roster, and they're just kind of going through week 4, week 5 of the season and standing pat. And then all of a sudden, they got a trick in their sleeve. And it's like, wait a minute. We've got that guy. Another team. So I grew up a Stanford fan. And they had Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck was amazing. My favorite player ever. And then they brought in a guy by the name of Josh Nunez. And he had a big win against USC. And they're going fine, but you're like, oh, I don't know how good the quarterback play is. It's more the offensive line. It's more of this stuff. Well, that's the Lauri and the Jaren. Those guys are good. The program's well established in those guys. But then they brought up this guy by the name of Kevin Hogan. And is he more talented than Andrew Luck? No, absolutely not. But he was the most winningest quarterback in the Pac-12 and the winningest quarterback in Stanford football history. And he came up and he changed everything. In the middle of the season, and Stanford lost Andrew Luck and then had a quarterback change in the middle of the season and won the Rose Bowl and beat Wisconsin and a trio of backs. So I know it's a cross-sport analogy, and you're not asking about Stanford football, but I couldn't help but think it. I could see a world in which the Jazz have two All-Stars, and they're a top 10 team in the West and a top 15 team in the NBA, and they have their best weapon kind of just standing pat, and he's scoring 17 a game. He's the rookie of the year, but he's not quite there. And then the calendar flips, and January hits, and he's getting better. And February, March, and April, that dude is that dude. And you've got your Heisman caliber quarterback. Your change of the program is here, and the best player on the team isn't honored an All-Star, and you have two other All-Stars. That idea makes me very excited as a Jazz fan. Now, the part that makes me even more excited, and I'll just make another analogy, and it's like having a bunch of running backs. And you got one that's really good, and he's going to go to the pros. And then you've got another one that's a couple years younger, and you have him kind of on gadget plays, and he's awesome. Well, that's Darren Peterson. He's that guy you're like, oh yeah, that guy could be our special guy. He could be a first round pick type of NFL prospect if you're following this college analogy. But then you also got another guy who may not be as great as the great one you got in Darren Peterson, but he's got some precocious skills, some stuff where you're like, well, you can't teach that. He's just got it since he was young. And that's Ace Bailey. So I'll use my Stanford analogy. Christian McCaffrey came up after a host of great running backs for Stanford. The Toby Gerharts, the Stephon Taylors, all those guys. And all of a sudden, you had your best back ever. So you had a precedent for amazing running backs. Second place in the Heisman, Toby Gerhart. Stephon Taylor led in yards. And that's Lauri and Jaren. McCaffrey comes along and changes everything. And then you've got another guy that comes along, and he doesn't play a lot because McCaffrey's so good. And that's where all the attention is. But Bryce Love comes along, and when he gets his own limelight, He got second in the Heisman too. That's kind of what I think of Ace Bailey. And it's a fun analogy for me as a Stanford fan, so I'm enjoying this. So bear with me. But the reason this is pertinent is what makes me so excited as a Jazz fan is that I think the Jazz could have 2 All-Stars, and neither of whom should end the next year, if not this year, but the next year, as even one of the best players on the team. It should be Darren Peterson. It might be Ace Bailey. Because I sincerely believe by Ace Bailey's year 3, which is the next year, that he'll be scoring 20 a game. And I believe Darren Peterson by year 2 is a 25 a game guy. Some scouts say he's a top 10 guy. And I've never heard a player other than Wembanyama recently, since I've been able to really understand this and actually talk to scouts. I've never heard people be like, yeah, I can see that guy in year 2 being a top 10 guy. I've heard people say that. Tim McMahon reported it. And then I've asked people that know about basketball. I asked Kyle Collinsworth, who played in the NBA, how far-fetched is that? He's like, oh, not at all. The game's easy for him. He's going to do it. He reminds me of Kyrie Irving. It's like the lack of surprise about such an audacious statement makes me so excited for the future that the Jazz could have 2 All-Stars this season and neither be the best player to finish the season. And that's how I feel about the Utah Jazz. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Hopefully you guys understood the analogy. It was fun for me to think. It's always fun chatting with you guys on Locked On Jazz. So thank you for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day, each and every day. For your second listen, find Locked On NBA podcast where there's no offseason. Wes, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, go Jazz.